morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're so happy.
It's on.
Okay. We're so happy to be here with you all today to talk about a very important topic. And as we stand here right now, there's different scams that are going to affect you today, next week, because the scammers are getting more and more sophisticated as time goes by. Depending on what could be going on in your town, in your state, or even in the country, they feed on that, so you have to be very, very careful. So we're going to go over some broad issues, and then at the end, if you have questions, we'll gladly answer them for you. So we're going to talk about online safety, which is internet safety. So one of the biggest scams that will affect you on your computer is the tech support scam. And so many people have issues with their computer. They'll get a pop-up that'll come on your screen, and it looks like there isn't anything that you can do to remove it other than to click on the button that they are telling you to click on. But that is always a scam. What you definitely want to do with that is you want to completely turn off your device. You don't want to click on that particular link, because what typically will happen is they will, when you click on the link, you're now they're able to access your information, your computer. They'll have you call a number, and then they'll try to get access to your computer. So it's very, very important that you do not click on any links that come across your computer. You want to check reviews for websites or retailers that you don't recognize prior to making any purchases. This is typically where you'd find that on social media. A lot of times when you're on your computer, you'll do searches for certain things, and then all of a sudden, because a lot of websites have cookies, they track what you're looking for. So then when you're on certain sites, you'll find something come up and you'll say, wow, I was just looking for something like that. How did my computer know? And that's the cookies that are tracking you. So you have to be very careful, because then some of those websites could be fraudulent. So you have to be very, very careful. So anytime you want to make a purchase and you're not familiar with the retailer, you want to go online and check reviews for that retailer, and just make sure that it's a trustworthy company or site. You want to use a strong password, and you don't want to save passwords on your device. And so the issue with saving any I know it's so much easier to save passwords on your device than to put them, to save them elsewhere. But what happens is that if someone were to access your computer, typically it happens through the tech support scam. Your passwords are saved in something called a keychain on your computer. So when they access your computer, that's the first thing they go for, is your keychain. So they now have access to all your passwords. So it's really, really important not to save them on the device.
Also, do not put a list of them underneath your computer, which many people do. They put a whole list of their passwords and put it under the computer so they can access it. So you don't ever want to do that either.
You never want to respond to unsolicited emails, and it's not just emails. It could be text messages. It could be phone calls. Because if you didn't reach out looking for information, most likely it's a scam, okay? You don't want to ever send any personal information on a public network. What does that mean? That means if you are, sitting in a coffee shop, or you're at maybe a hotel that uses a public Wi-Fi that doesn't have a passcode, that's where scammers could access information if you were to, like check your bank account or do anything that would have any kind of personal information on it. Before you dispose of a computer or mobile phone, you want to make sure everything is permanently deleted from it. And if you go to, Verizon or a reputable retailer, they can help you with that, or even Best Buy or Geek Squad or any of those reputable organizations, they can help you with that. How do you safeguard your personal information? If you don't already have one, we have them up here, the RFID cards. So basically what that is it prevents your credit card or debit card from being skimmed. So these are really important to have. There are also like little wallets and handbags that you can purchase that would have the kind of protection as well. So how do you use that? So when you go to use your credit card or your debit card, you would take it out of the sleeve and then quickly put it back into the sleeve. So that actually, if somebody was walking by, it happens particularly in large areas like airports, train stations. They can go by with a device and they can get your information that way. Okay. You also want to be careful, especially in this area. We've had issues with skimming machines that have been found on supermarket, the credit card machines. So you have to be very careful when you go to use them. If it looks a little off, you definitely want to alert the cashier because sometimes they don't, they're very savvy in how that they handle these things. So you have to be very careful about that.
I jiggle it. Before you use it, jiggle it. Make sure it's not moving. That when you're using your debit card in a machine, just touch it, shake it.
Or if your card has the tap function, using the tap function would be a safer alternative. So the next thing is your social security number. So this is a big one because your social security number you should not be giving out to anyone. I know a lot of times we'll go to the doctor and you feel like you're always filling out forms where they're asking you for the same information. So unless they have updated their software and they no longer have that information, they should have saved all of your information where you wouldn't have to give them, all of that. Particularly your social security number. You don't need to enter that. We suggest if that is on a form that you leave it blank. So unless you are applying for some type of you're purchasing something or applying for something that would require your social security number, please do not give it out. You want to receive, when you receive your online bank or credit card statements, and also your health insurance claims. It's a big issue with Medicare fraud now. I'm not sure if a lot of people look at their reports that they get in the mail, their statements. But that's another big issue is people will be charged for medical equipment that they've never ordered, and it's charged to Medicare. So you definitely want to check on your statements regularly, your bank accounts regularly, just to make sure that there hasn't been anything, unusual in your information. Any of your documents that you no longer use or anything that would have any kind of information on it, you want to shred it. You definitely don't want to keep it, keep it around. You can review your credit card reports once a year. We suggest that people have a credit monitoring service. There is a fee, a monthly fee. But what happens is anytime anyone tries to access anything or even try to use any of your cards, you will receive a notification, and that's really important. You can prevent consumer credit reporting companies from providing your credit file. So what does that mean? Optoutprescreen.com is on the bottom there, and what that means is that people will get notifications in the mail that you have been pre-qualified for this credit card. And if you want to opt out of receiving those, you can do that at that, and we suggest people do that as well, because if you're not home or you use a P.O. box, or there's a number of different ways that someone could actually get that application, fill it out, and now they've opened a credit card in your name.
And that, to add to that, even if you don't use your credit cards, you think, oh, I don't have to check my credit report, I don't use credit cards. You still need to check that report to make sure that somebody hasn't opened a card in your name, which you wouldn't know unless you checked your credit report. So even if you don't use credit cards, you should always check your credit report.
And there's a new fraud that's going on right now. It's called spam bombing. And that sounds kind of crazy. But what that is you will get a bunch of spam messages in your email. They will come in 50 to 100 at a time. So you'll look at it and you'll say, what is all this, junk? And then you'll just start deleting it, or you'll think you'll delete them all. And what they're doing is that is a scammer, okay, that has either accessed some type of personal information of yours, a credit card, a debit card. They've made a transaction, a fraudulent transaction, and within that all those emails is either a notification from your bank, or it's a notification from a retailer of a large purchase. So you definitely, if you ever see a bunch of emails come through, you have to go, and I know it's difficult, but you have to go through each one, and then you'll see, because it definitely is a big deal now, and you want to catch that right away, because they are hoping that you'll just think it's all trash and delete them all, and you'll miss that from your bank. That's a very important one. The grandparent scam is also a big scam that continues to affect us here. What they're doing now is they can, go on social media, and they can, if you have like a Facebook account or any type of information like that, they can look and see what your family members' names are. I mean, they've gotten very, very savvy about that. So our suggestion is to have if you have grandchildren, is to have a code word for your grandchildren. That way, if anything ever happened and you received a phone call, you could ask, what's the code word? And of course, they're not going to know because it's a scam. But unfortunately, it continues to happen. The other big one that's just recently happened in Rockland is if you get a senior center or any other type of newsletter that, it's something that you get regularly, and it's a trusted, publication. There's also ads in there. And what happened was there was a fraudulent individual who put an ad in a newsletter for a senior center for roofing, and this unknowing individual gave this gentleman $10,000 and took off. And she just expected that, well, it was in the newsletter, and this is, that she just thought that it was recommended by, the senior center, and that's not how it works. It's just a paying newsletter. So you have to be very, very careful. Always look for recommendations before you ever give out any large sums of money. If you suspect identity theft, we have some booklets that I think we just put out there. That's a very, very great resource for you, because depending on the type of identity theft that occurred, it walks you through exactly what you need to do to handle it, because of course, like when it happens, people are just exasperated. They don't know what to do first, and it definitely walks you through what you need to do. The first thing, of course, is you want to change your logins, passwords, and any PINs for your accounts. If it's a bank situation, you want to call your bank and cancel that, credit card or debit card immediately. And a lot of times it can be frustrating, because if you notice it right away, it could still be a pending charge on your account. So they can't actually do anything until it actually hits your account. But then they can, it takes about a week, but they will usually be able to rectify the situation. You can place a fraud alert if anything happens like that, which is active for 1 year with one of the credit reporting agencies. or you can do an extended fraud alert, which is active for 7 years. We suggest that you do the extended fraud alert because if you were ever received a letter from an organization that said, you know, we've had a data breach, your information was included in this data breach, you know, that could be tens of thousands of people that they've gotten all this information. So they may not use your information this year. They may not use your, you know, do anything with your information till next year. So you definitely want to be covered for a good 7 years, and we recommend that. You can also put a credit freeze on your accounts, which means that, you know, no one can access your accounts at all. And we have the numbers up there if you need to contact any of the credit bureaus. It's also in the booklets that are out there. And then, you know, reporting identity theft is very important because even if it's you think, oh, it's not a big deal, the more you report it, it becomes a big deal. And then, you know, especially locally, they can put it out on social media, you know, or through like a local senior center that this is what's going on. So it's like a public service type of announcement. So you definitely want to let the public know. So we get our information from the Consumer Sentinel, which is part of the Federal Trade Commission, and they usually update their stats in early March. So this is, we still have 2023's information, but it's always typically the same. So the #1 reported scams in Massachusetts has been identity theft. Someone uses your personal information to commit fraud. Imposter scams are also very, very big, and that's the tech support scam. Claiming to be from a government agency. The big thing with the government agency, if you don't call them and request a callback, they're not calling you, okay? It's just, you will get a letter in the mail that looks legitimate, and even if you're not sure, you always want to go on the internet, look up the number, make sure everything matches, because you never know, okay? But they never call you. The Social Security Administration will not call you, they will not call you unless you call them and request a call back. A family or a friend is in trouble, that's typically the grandparent scam, you know, and we just talked about that. A romantic interest, that is the romance scams, which is a very big problem. And what usually happens there is people will meet someone online, or they play internet games and someone gets your information that way, and then they start talking to you. They develop a relationship, and a lot of times it'll take a long time. But then all of a sudden they'll tell you, oh, you know, I just made, you know, X amount of dollars on this investment. You should get involved in it. And slowly but surely, because now you feel like you can trust them, because you've been, you know, talking to them for a period of time, people will give out large sums of money, and then it ends up being a scam. So you have to be very, very careful about that. You know, credit bureaus, information furnishers or court users, the complaints are that when they do suffer identity theft, just getting everything squared away, people are complaining is not happening as fast as they would like. Online shopping and negative reviews is what we also talked about with the fraudulent websites. Phishing. What phishing is when you get emails, texts, or calls that seem to be from people that you know, but they're actually from the scammers. And when you click on the link, it asks for personal information, password, and they're just looking to steal your information, credit card number, so you have to be very careful about that. They use familiar company names. They will use Eversource, National Grid, Comcast, Xfinity, and they'll even copy their logo. So you have to be really, really careful. And a lot of times what we'll tell you to do is if you get the email, first of all, if you get text messages, just delete them. You never know with text messages, just delete them all. But with the emails, if you hover over where it's from, and you click on where it's from, because it'll say it's from Netflix, but when you click on where it's from, it comes up with some other address that's not Netflix or nothing like Netflix, so you know it's not legitimate. And of course, they always pressure you to act now. So if anyone ever pressures you into doing anything right away, it's always a scam. You want to avoid the hook. So you want to look up the website or phone number for the company who's contacting you. You never want to call the number on the email or the letter that you receive. You want to look it up yourself and make sure you're calling the right place. You want to look for scam tip-offs. First of all, if you don't have an account with the company. People are getting these text messages saying that they owe the Department of Transportation for,
Easy
the
Pass.
Easy Pass, and a lot of people don't even use the Easy Pass, or they don't use that at all. So you just want to delete that. A lot of the scam tip-offs will be spelling that's incorrect.
Yep.
So you have to look out for that. This is a typical one. I think one of us received this, saying that it looks like it's from Netflix, but it says, if you look at it, I don't know if everybody can see it, but it says, "Hi, dear." Well, I mean, that's not a professional way to address an email. So clearly that's not coming from, anyone who's in the United States. So you have to be very careful. You want to protect yourself. You want to use multi-factor authentication. What does that mean? That means that, with your banks especially, it's asking you to, enter your mother's maiden name, give your cell phone number so they can call and you can issue a code. And I know it's complicated. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to use that, but it's really for your protection. Reminders, your social security number will never be suspended, so if you ever receive a call or any type of threats like that, it's untrue. Your bank account will not be seized. These are all the types of things that these fraudsters will say. The Social Security Administration will never call to threaten your benefits, nor ask you for money. Phone numbers can be cloned. So that's another thing with the phone. It'll look like it's coming from a phone number you recognize, like a local exchange, but it could be a fraudulent call. So if you're not sure, let it go to voicemail. That's what we say. If you don't answer the phone, we call it stranger danger. Just like when you were a little kid, you don't want to talk to strangers. It's the same thing on the phone. You don't know who it is, just ignore them.
Part of the phone scam, what they're doing is they're calling you, and if they have, sometimes they'll have your name. And they'll say, "Mary, can you hear me? Can you hear me?" And they want you to say yes. And once you say yes, you've now entered into probably 5 years of Fish and Tackle magazine subscription for $300. And they can get in that way. So you never ever want to say the word yes when they start asking you, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?"
The do not call registries, we have the phone numbers up for the do not call registries.
And they're in the book as well.
And the thing where people say, well, why I'm on the call registry, why am I not still getting these? The scammers, the people that are fraudulent, they're not going to be following this. These are legitimate telemarketers are not going to be able to call you. So just be aware of that. So that's basically the end of our presentation. We wanted to keep it short because we knew that we had limited time. We wanted to answer questions that you may have. So please fire away. Let us know questions. Yes?
What if, because I've been on like Amazon, eBay, and they sometimes test me to see if I'm human,
Yep.
They ask like, click on this picture and match this, or type in letters and numbers.
Recaptcha.
What happens if you're scammed by a bot, and you can't trace it? Would you report it to cybersecurity or?
Yep,
In the book, the Federal Trade
the Federal
Commission.
Trade Commission.
Okay.
Yep, that would be where to report it. Yeah, there's a whole thing on that.
Because sometimes there's not a human behind it,
Right,
You don't know
right.
it.
Like it's an automated thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if anyone ever requests that you pay for anything with cryptocurrency, that's always a scam. So you just have to be really, really careful. No one should be asking you for gift cards, cryptocurrency, anything of the sort. So if that is ever an issue, it's a red flag right there that it's a scam. Yes?
So you talked about this spam bombing.
Yep.
So most of my spam goes into a spam folder,
Yes.
and then I sort of gaze at it. Yeah. So is it okay if you don't see your bank's name or something like that? I mean, I don't have to open each one of those, correct?
No, you wouldn't open them. You just
Well,
look
that's what I
at it.
figured, but I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
but you definitely want to go through your spam folder just to make sure that hasn't happened to you.
Because I know sometimes there's something legit in there and I have to pull it out. But
Yeah,
most
yeah.
of the time it's in the spam, but I put everything into a spam.
Yes, as long as you check it, and we suggest if it looks, fraudulent, to just delete it and not even open it.
Which is what I thought, but
yeah.
I wanted to clarify it.
Anybody else? Janet?
With all these commissions supposedly being dismantled and whatever, are we in for bigger problems, or we just have to wait and see?
I think
Pretty much wait and
we
see.
have to wait and see.
Every day there's a new scam. I mean, you can protect yourself from a scam today. 2 days from now, there's gonna be another scam out that's gonna get you another way. I mean, all we suggest is that you're just very diligent in your billing, your phone calls. You look before you click, basically. Never click on a site that they tell you to. Don't ever click on anything that you're not sure of. You just always want to.
No click, no click.
And
Yeah.
also, when you're searching on the internet, you're Googling something, there are a lot of fraudulent sites that are one letter off of the actual site. You have to be very careful with that too, because we had an issue where someone was trying to reach the RMV, and they were like I don't know what they hit, but it looked like the RMV, and then they put in all their personal information. It was bad. So you definitely, if it's anything that has to do, you want to make sure it says .gov, especially with the RMV, because a lot of times if you have to go to the RMV to get the new license, like the Real ID, for example, they'll say, oh, you can do a pre-registration online. Well, you want to make sure you're on the mass.gov site and not, it's really important because that's happened too. Remember, I think it was in Bridgewater. And they went to the registry thinking, oh, they didn't, all of their information. Terrible.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Oh, Anne, you got a
Yeah,
question?
no, I had one too. Okay, we got, now with this whole thing of both, was it National Grid and Eversource jacking up their service,
Yeah.
suddenly, yes. And you're getting these calls, we received one the other day, oh, this is National Grid, we can give you half off, you're late with your bill. Now, chances are National Grid is not calling to say you're late for your bill, so, okay. Now, if you start, believing that this is true, and you give them some of your information, and then you hang out, that means it's been canceled, right?
It depends what you've given them, exactly. If you've given them any credit card information, no. Your account number, you just want to,
have the account number now.
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, it was just, these sudden calls drive me nuts. And of course, you're not walking out, generally speaking, with your National Grid account number or what have you. But those were two that I was concerned with. But I imagine you pass this on to people, but I will say this, for example, in Brockton, if we call the police department, if someone's come to our home, because
Yes,
I want to say senior citizens are targets,
yes,
that you call the business number of the police,
Yes.
and they respond just about immediately. I mean, they came against really close to the police department, but about 10 minutes later, and they totally follow up with it. And apparently, if this is, correct me if I'm wrong, they share their information with other communities
yes.
because people are flagged as scammers and that going, okay. I just wanted that along.
Yes.
We need to close up, but you're entertaining individual questions, correct?
Yes.
People can ask individual. Does everybody know how you can tell if a website is secure or not? Well, and there's a little unlocked lock symbol in the search engine bar that says secure or not secure. You don't want to be on a not secure website. And some very legitimate websites are not secure. But most of these things have happened to me. And the most terrifying was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Easton, and I got a call. It was actually from my father saying that his grandson was in jail and needed bail. And of course, it was terrifying. And because that's an emotional response, I need to get my nephew out of jail. And it was completely bogus. And I was like, how they found my father, who legally lived in Florida, and found him here was very scary. So they're very crafty.
They get you by scaring you, by yelling, your son is here, and they've got a kid crying in the background, and then all of a sudden, now you're saying, is that you, Jimmy? Well, now they've got the name. Yes, we have James here. So now you just gave them the grandson's name without even knowing you did it, because you're in a panic.
Right.
So that's how they can get information from you that you don't even realize in panic mode.
And that's what this movie, Thelma, it's entitled Thelma, is about. This 90-year-old grandma is scammed out of $10,000 in her own town, and she and a friend go and get it. I mean, they retaliate. So it's a comedy. But I don't think any of this is funny, because this has all happened to me. Luckily, I have credit cards like American Express that will find.
Yes.
They will go after them with the clubs. So, I have a lot of protections. But this is wonderful information. We have lots of tchotchkes. Some got passed out. Individual questions are welcome.